The meeting of giants that the title announces is not a metaphor about luck or about the universe conspiring in favor of Virgo at a special moment. It's not about waiting for someone important to appear and solve the equation. It's about what happens when Virgo, finally quietly, with all the precision it has for everything else, decides to stop conspiring against its own size. The influential person who's looking for a Virgo right now isn't looking for an assistant. They aren't looking for someone to execute their ideas efficiently. They aren't looking for someone to confirm what they already know or to fill an operational gap. You are looking for a giant that hasn't yet recognized itself as such. Looking for someone who thinks about structures when the whole world is busy thinking about surfaces. Someone who sees what's not working before anyone around realizes there's something to fix. Someone who doesn't need applause to deliver excellence, but who deserves more than most to be recognized for the true weight of what they carry and the rigor with which they carry it. And that's what Virgo is all about. What changes now is not the capacity. What changes is the authorization. The decision made from the inside out that the laboratory can finally have its windows open without destroying what was built inside. That the lighthouse can light up again without losing control over its own light. That the key can at last be used for its intended purpose, not to be kept as proof that a door exists, but to open what the door protects. Giants don't meet by accident. They recognize each other, first within themselves, in the quiet intimacy of their own laboratory, in a moment without fanfare or witnesses, then in the eyes of those who operate on the same frequency and return the gaze with genuine recognition. And only then, after the internal recognition has already occurred, does the world begin to see what has always been there, waiting. The most powerful people in the world, those who build empires, who make decisions that change markets, who operate on frequencies that most people can't even perceive, those people seek out Virgos. Not just anyway, not by chance, with a very specific intention, and Virgos, most of the time, don't know this. It stays there, organized, efficient, solving problems that nobody asked it to solve, refining systems that nobody will notice have been refined, carrying a level of inner clarity that seems unnecessary for the life it's living. Because Virgo learned one thing very early on: being too big is scary. So you learn to fit in a lower level job, in a relationship that doesn't truly challenge you, in a space where genius fits with shoulders hunched, occupying no more than is strictly necessary. That's not humility. This is such a perfectly constructed protection mechanism that it almost seems like a virtue. And it is precisely this internal architecture, this invisible process that Virgo operates in silence, that makes an influential person stop, look at a Virgo and think, that's it, that's the one. But let's take it easy, because before you can understand why someone important is looking for a Virgo right now, you need to understand what that person is really looking for. And it's not what you imagine. When someone who operates at a high level goes looking for a person, they're not looking for competence. Anyone can buy competence. They're not looking for dedication. Anyone can fake dedication. What this person is looking for is discernment, the ability to look at a complex situation and see what it truly is, not what it appears to be, not what everyone is saying it is, what it really is. And Virgo does this with a naturalness that, to an outsider, seems almost supernatural. Virgo enters a room and within minutes knows what isn't working, knows what's missing, knows what can be improved. Not necessarily because they studied that specific subject, but because the way Virgo processes reality is fundamentally different from the way most people process it. Virgins don't read what's on the surface. Virgin reads the structure. And this is such a rare gift that those who possess it don't realize how rare it is. Because for Virgo, this isn't a special ability. It's just their way of being in the world. It's just how things work. But there's one question that remains unanswered before we move on. If Virgo has this capacity, if this discernment is real, if influential people truly perceive this, why is Virgo still living on a smaller scale than it could? Why do you still carry this silent feeling that there is something more, something bigger, something that hasn't happened yet? It's not a lack of talent, it's not a lack of intelligence, it's not even a lack of effort. It's something more subtle than that. Think about it. There's a fundamental difference between having discernment and allowing yourself to be recognized for it. Virgo masters the first, but the second, being recognized, being sought after, being seen for who you truly are. That's where the story starts to get disturbingly interesting, because there is an influential person now who has already seen it, and the question is no longer whether the virgin will be found. The question is, what happens when Virgo stops making itself small? It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose, is less a book and more a lens, a way to refine how Virgo sees itself, because Virgo's problem has never been a lack of vision. The problem was using that extraordinary vision to analyze everything except its own true potential. And it is precisely in this gap that this material fits. In the space between what Virgo knows it is capable of doing and what it has not yet allowed itself to be. You're at that point now. Processing, acknowledging something that was somewhat dormant but never truly disappeared. And this acknowledgement has a deadline, not because the book will vanish, but because that window of clarity, that willingness to listen, to receive, to act, it closes. You know this mechanism because you're a Virgo. You know how the analytical mind can, in the blink of an eye, transform a revelation into an argument, an opening into a reason to wait a little longer. Don't wait. The link is in the first pinned comment. But be aware, this content may be taken down. Click now and download your copy. And while you're thinking about this, tell me in the comments, have you ever had a moment when you clearly knew you were operating far below your potential, but you didn't act anyway? What held you back? Write it below. Virgo's inner laboratory is a place that very few people actually get to see, not because Virgo hides it on purpose, although it does, in a way. It's just that this constant refinement process that Virgo operates is so ingrained in its way of being that it seems invisible even to itself. It just seems like the normal way of thinking. It seems like the natural rhythm of things, like breathing, like processing, like waking up in the morning and immediately sweeping the environment in search of what isn't working. It's about taking a raw idea and putting it through layers of analysis until it's clean. It's about sensing interpersonal dynamics and identifying in seconds what's working and what's deteriorating beneath the tranquil exterior. It's the almost physical impulse to not deliver anything that isn't at the highest possible level, even if that level is only visible to Virgo. Even if no one around notices the difference between the version Virgo delivered and the version Virgo silently discarded the previous night. Imagine a scientist who never publishes, not because the experiments don't work, but because the internal quality standards are so demanding that nothing seems ready enough to leave the lab. There's always one more variable to test. There's always data that hasn't been fully verified yet. There's always a margin of error that could be reduced. There's always something that could be a little sharper, a little more precise, a little more accurate. And so the scientist remains, refining, improving, elevating. Meanwhile, elsewhere, people with less methodology publish mediocre work and reap recognition, visibility, and opportunities. People who clearly do less than what scientists are capable of are advancing, being seen, and being invited to the right tables. This paradox is real within Virgo, and it's disturbing in a very specific way, because Virgo not only perceives what's happening, but can analyze the mechanism with surgical precision. They know that perfection is functioning like a cage. They know, and yet they simply can't stop adjusting, refining, retreating. Why? Because Virgo's standard of excellence isn't just about quality. It never has been just about quality. It's about protection. Until the work is finished, no one can judge it. Until the potential is fully revealed, no one can be disappointed by it. And if no one is disappointed, Virgo is safe. Safe from having to bear the weight of being exactly what it seems to be. Great, capable, irreplaceable. Enormous in the most honest sense of the word. This is the inner laboratory. Beautiful on the outside. Perfect on the inside. With all the windows closed and the air growing heavier with each passing year. But now something different is happening. You have someone on the outside who knows laboratories, who understands structure, processes, quality, who isn't knocking on the door to ask for a favor, not to use Virgo's knowledge, not to extract yet another solution from someone who knows how to solve things, but to say something simple and at the same time absolutely disturbing. I've seen the laboratory. I've seen it from the outside, but I've seen it, and I want to go in, not as a client, not as a boss, as an equal. And then Virgo, stop, because no one had said that before. There's a price that Virgos pay every day, and they rarely manage to name it precisely. It's not the price of effort. Virgo is more than used to effort. It practically feeds on it, finding in it a kind of familiar comfort. It's not the price of exhaustion. It's not the price of invisible work that goes unrecognized. It's the price of chosen invisibility. Every time Virgo downplays their response in a meeting because they realize they'll sound smarter than the boss, and that will create unnecessary friction. Every time you hold back the deeper analysis because you know it will be too awkward for the environment. Every time you let an opportunity pass because you're not yet 100% ready for it, and Virgo rarely feels 100% ready for anything that truly matters. Imagine a lighthouse. A lighthouse exists for one thing: to guide ships in the darkness. That is its reason for being. It is its most essential, deepest, most irreplaceable function. It is what it is, before anything else. But imagine a lighthouse that one day decides to extinguish its own light. Not because the light has failed, the light is perfect, stronger than ever, but because it doesn't want to attract attention. It doesn't want the responsibility of being the point of reference. It doesn't want ships to depend on it, to look at it as it is. The lighthouse stands there, in the dark, quiet. And the ships that needed that light pass by aimlessly. Some run aground. Some get lost on routes that the lighthouse could have avoided with a single flash. And the lighthouse observes all this from the darkness it chose to create, with a strange feeling that mixes relief with something nameless, but that weighs more and more heavily. Virgins do that. Not always, not in everything, but in crucial moments, precisely when brilliance could change something real, when size could make all the difference. Virgo fades. And what remains after that moment? A mixture of relief and something that feels like regret but doesn't have an exact name. A feeling that it's over, that that specific window has closed, that the right person was there and you were, in a way, absent from yourself, present in body, absent in real size, fulfilling the safe role instead of the true one. It's not just about missing opportunities, although that's part of it too. It's the gradual erosion of confidence in one's own judgment. It's the silent accumulation of moments when Virgo knew, with absolute certainty, without a shadow of a doubt, what needed to be done, what needed to be said, where one needed to be, and one didn't go. One didn't do it. One didn't say it. This accumulation has weight. There is a specific form of grief, which isn't exactly guilt, but is closely related to it. It's an internal conversation that never truly ends, a constant dialogue between what Virgo is and what Virgo allowed the world to see. Now you have someone looking for Virgo, someone who operates on a different level, who recognizes the frequency even when the lighthouse is off. Because this type of person has learned to feel the structure, not just see the light. The question is, when that person finally reaches Virgo, when they knock on that door and wait for a real answer, will the lighthouse turn on? Or will Virgo find yet another reason to stay in the dark? The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. Then the person arrives. Not necessarily in a dramatic way, not necessarily with fanfare, with a formal proposal, with a prepared speech that makes it clear that this is the moment. Sometimes it's in a conversation that seems casual, an encounter that seemed to have no weight, until, in the middle of the exchange, something changes silently but unmistakably. Virgo says something, an observation, an analysis that for Virgo is simply the obvious reading of the situation, something any sensible person would see if they paid a little more attention. A 2- or 3-word insight that cuts straight to what is essential, that eliminates the noise and gets to the core. And the person stops. Not just anyway, stop for real, with the complete attention of someone who has seen a lot and learned to recognize when faced with something they haven't seen before. A real pause, not a polite one. A change in the angle of the gaze that says it all without needing words. He imagines 2 tuning forks placed close to each other. When you touch one of them, the other begins to vibrate. Not because someone touched it directly, not because it decided to vibrate, but because the frequency of the first met the frequency of the second, and the second recognizes it. At some level that precedes language, that precedes reason, that is prior to any conscious decision. This is how this meeting works. Someone with real influence doesn't need a Virgo to introduce themselves. They don't need a formal resume, a carefully organized list of achievements, or a documented history on paper. Because what this person identifies isn't the history. It's the frequency of how Virgo thinks, the way Virgo organizes reality in real time. And when that frequency resonates with their own, recognition happens before any words of introduction. It happens even before Virgo realizes they are being recognized. But then something happens that Virgo didn't expect to feel at that moment. Fear, not the common fear of failure, of making a technical mistake, of not being good enough. It's a stranger, more specific fear than any of those. It's the fear of truly being seen, of no longer being able to operate in invisible mode after that. That if you accept that recognition, if you let that person truly see the size of the laboratory, something will change permanently and irreversibly. And Virgo will have to change too. You're going to have to take on more space. You're going to have to stop using incomplete perfection as an explanation. You're going to have to become, in public, what you've always been in private. And change, even when it's clearly for the better, is a form of loss. The loss of the self that existed before, the loss of the protection that invisibility offered, the loss of the laboratory with the closed windows, the only space where Virgo could be immense without having to answer for it. The question that emerges from this moment is not whether the influential person will recognize Virgo. They already have. It's already happened. It's irreversible. The question now is different. Will Virgo recognize themselves in return? Will they look at their own reflection in this encounter and accept what is being shown? This is the part about Virgo that nobody likes to hear. Not because it's cruel, but because it's too true to be merely comfortable. The door that separates the Virgin from her own greatness is not locked from the outside, it's locked from the inside, and there's a key. Virgo knows exactly where it is. She's always known, with the same precision she has for knowing where anything that matters is. And sometimes she takes that key, holds it carefully, examines it with that characteristic clarity she applies to any complex problem, and puts it back in its place. Returns it to the drawer, closes the drawer. Because opening that door isn't just about accepting a new opportunity. It's about accepting a responsibility that goes far beyond hard work, which Virgos have never shied away from. It's about accepting that you are exactly what the influential person sees. That potential isn't a future possibility. It's not something that will happen when you're more ready, when the context is more favorable, when conditions finally align in a way that seems safe enough. It's a present reality. You choose whether or not to pursue it now. And for Virgo, who has built an entire identity around the process, the continuous refinement, the "it's not yet at the level it needs to be," accepting that it's already ready is almost violent. It almost seems like a betrayal of the established pattern, as if rigor had been abandoned halfway through the process, as if the laboratory had lost its reason for existing. Except here's the thing Virgo rarely gets to see from the inside. The laboratory doesn't cease to exist when the door opens. It goes along, completely intact. The analytical capacity, the discernment, the excellence, the inner rigor that never wavered, all of that crosses the threshold with Virgo. What changes isn't the pattern. What changes is the scope. While the door is closed, the laboratory analyzes the world and filters the conclusions for internal use. An extraordinary collection of insights that Virgo consistently accumulates but rarely leaves the lab on the scale it could. When the door opens, that same laboratory begins to operate in the world on a real scale. Discoveries become decisions that affect other people. Insights become structures that others inhabit and benefit from. Virgo's excellence ceases to be a well-kept secret and becomes a force that truly moves things. And that precisely is what the meeting of giants truly is. It's not a powerful person discovering Virgo from the outside. It's Virgo discovering, for the first time, and in a way that can't be undone, that he was already a giant even before the encounter. That the only person who didn't know this yet was Virgo himself. And the key that's in the drawer, the key that the Virgin examines and returns to its place, carries the weight of everything that hasn't yet been built because the door has remained closed. Recognizing that the key is in your hands is the beginning of everything. But Virgo knows better than anyone that recognizing this isn't enough. A system, a structure, a way to transform insight into concrete action is needed before the analytical mind finds the next argument to wait for. And that's exactly what the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose offers, not as generic motivation, but as a specific engineering for how Virgo processes, decides, and ultimately authorizes itself. A map of the internal system, a way to use the same precision that Virgo applies to the external world to, for the first time, apply that same precision to itself. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. A river doesn't know it's a river until it reaches the sea. Before that, it's just movement, water that flows because it has to flow, carrying what it carries, taking the possible paths, circumventing obstacles along the way without making much noise, without knowing exactly what it's looking for, without knowing that there is a destination that is proportional to the volume it carries. And then you find the sea. And he understands everything at once, not as an intellectual revelation, not as a conclusion reached after careful analysis, as a visceral recognition, as if he had always known and had finally arrived at the place where that knowledge makes complete sense. This is how Virgo feels when they stop making themselves small. When the response stops dwindling, when the deeper analysis is no longer kept for the exclusive use of the laboratory, when, finally, the door that was locked from the inside is opened and it is discovered that the outside is not the threatening place it seemed from within. It's just bigger. It's just the actual size.